This is Robert Harper with Virginia Farm Bureau's Grain Division. Glad to bring you the Merchandiser Minute for Thursday, December 31st, 2020. And Happy New Year to all of you. I'm thankful we can get one more Merchandiser Minute in for this year. Let's take a look at how the futures markets closed on this shortened week in Chicago. March corn up 33 cents a bushel this week to close at $4.84. January beans up 52 cents a bushel for the week's trade. $13.15 was the closing price this afternoon. And your new crop wheat contract, July 21 wheat, up 13 cents to close at $6.28. We came into the week knowing that the managed money funds, were continuing to grow a big long position in these commodities on the Chicago board, and they sure added to it this week. What an amazing way to end 2020 with this type of price action. We are at 6.5-year highs, both on the nearby corn contract and on the nearby soybean contract. Again, a remarkable way to end this year. Fascinating. On Tuesday alone, we saw beans up 40 cents a bushel, and we'll discuss some of those influences here in a minute. When we look at what the USDA told us this week, export loadings, China, Mexico, and the Philippines were the top destinations that your products left the United States for this week. When we look at today's export sales report, we were at the top end of trade expectations. That's very good. Our largest corn buyer for the week was unknown. Japan came in second. Beans, largest buyer for the week, China. Number 2 was Egypt. And for the week on wheat, China was the number 1 buyer, and the Philippines came in second. We did get a sizable flash sales announcement on Monday of this week, and that helped start the rally that we saw through this shortened week. The ethanol report this week, for the first time in a long time, we actually saw a pretty serious drawdown in production. Production down 4.3%. And stocks up slightly at 1.4%. We know with this amazing rally that we've seen in the corn futures, ethanol has worked hard to try to keep up with that. Thinking about USDA, remember Tuesday, January the 12th, that's very close on us now. That's when we're going to get our annual crop production report with all the final numbers that we'll plug in for 2020 production numbers. So keep your mind on that, Tuesday, January the 12th. At noon Eastern. So when we think about this week, we had all kinds of influences coming at the market. We're used to that, but I wrote down a few things here just to kind of categorize them. We certainly have weather still influencing our futures markets. If we think about Brazil, we know they got significant rainfall coming into this week across most of their crop growing regions, and the word from anybody I read or people that I talk to who have connections in their agricultural regions say the conditions are better and they're getting better in Brazil. Argentina, on the other hand, and y'all have read the same thing and seen it, and I'll add to that, very dry across much of the growing regions in Argentina. So weather is definitely influencing the market. It looks like because of export demand as well as domestic demand in certain areas, we are still seeing not only U.S. stocks, but global stocks tighten or shrink. That's very positive for price action, as you know. And we think about the export demand and where it's coming from and why the term COVID food insecurity is still popular in the trade. We see a lot of commercial entities in countries around the world, as well as here domestically, that are trying to get coverage. End users trying to buy the commodities that they need to protect themselves from the price going higher. And we also have seen this week the managed money funds, other folks really starting to have concerns over inflation in the next 2 years, 2021 and 2022. Whether or not that'll happen will just remain to be seen. But we've seen more information and news about government stimulus, government money going into economies, not just here, but in other economies around the world. That gets the speculators excited. It gets them thinking about inflation, and it gets them this go around wanting to buy agricultural commodities. And Tuesday was a perfect example of that, when we had more debate about how much stimulus the federal government would be putting into the U.S. economy. So weather, tightening stocks, export demand due to several different things. Number one, food insecurity, as well as countries around the world just need what y'all grow, and then change in money flow because of inflationary concerns. So keep that in mind. Argentina was in the news a lot this week. The 20-day-old strike at the oilseed plants, at the crush plants, soybean crush plants, they resolved that strike this week. Y'all are very used to those strikes happening every year. This one just lasted a lot longer. They had about 150, 160 ships, depending on which news reports you saw, that have been anchored, waiting to get loaded with bean products and haven't. So that backlog, they're going to get to work through it now. We also saw Argentina this week, as well as Russia, make comments about export programs, and that tends to drive the price up. We saw from them within the last 24 hours, Argentina say they're going to end their corn export program until the end of February to ensure domestic supplies stay where they want them to be. So that was very positive for corn. And I would say about corn, today should be the 13th day in a row that the nearby corn futures contract has closed higher. That's remarkable. Some of you that have done this a lot longer than me, I had one gentleman tell me this week, in 30 years of watching the corn futures trade, he said it's the most outstanding move that he's seen, in his opinion, in his 30 years of watching it. 13 days in a row of the corn board being up. It's about 15% in the last couple weeks. So we've got a lot of influences that are pushing price higher. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to step in front of it and short the market at this time. We're going to come back next week on Monday to a new year with new influences and do our best to help you all market your production and manage your risk. Please give us a call. This is Robert at Virginia Farm Bureau's Grain Division.